On this episode of LegalAF, so it turns out, not surprisingly, that the so-called whistleblowers involved in FBI weaponization that the MAGA Republicans led by Jim Jordan keep on talking about are not whistleblowers at all. They are fake whistleblowers. They're basically three or so former FBI agents who were suspended or who lost security clearances because they were either at the insurrection, supported insurrectionists, refused to arrest white supremacists and domestic terrorists like the 3%ers who were involved in the insurrection. And these fake whistleblowers, a lot of them are even being funded by groups affiliated with Donald Trump. We will discuss this new bombshell report that was prepared by the Democrats that exposes this all. I love that these Democrats and pro-democracy people are just punching back. Meanwhile, Trump's former top campaign advisor and former top Trump administration official, she served in both roles, Kellyanne Conway, was seen meeting with the Manhattan District Attorney in New York in connection with the district attorney's ongoing criminal investigation into Donald Trump. We know that a grand jury is also impaneled in Manhattan. So the question is, are indictments looming? We will break it down here on LegalAF. Let's not forget also how this week began. A lot of legal news. So let's not forget the week began with the unsealing of another filing in Dominion's $1.6 billion with a B defamation lawsuit against Fox. The new filing, which is Dominion's opposition to the summary judgment filed by Fox, has more text messages, more emails, more under oath deposition transcripts, including a lot of messages and under oath deposition testimony directly from Rupert Murdoch. Remember, he sat for 2 days of depositions and Dominion got the goods. Murdoch plainly admitting that Fox hosts were spreading election disinformation and doing more than just hosting various breaking news updates. And then finally, the Department of Justice filed a legal brief with the Washington, D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals in a civil case that was filed by Capitol Police officers and members of Congress against Donald Trump directly and others for injuries caused to them on January 6th. And the Department of Justice, in its legal filing, said that Donald Trump, in his capacity when he was serving as the president, does not have absolute immunity when it comes to inciting political violence during the January 6th insurrection. It seems like a relatively simple premise, and it kind of begets the question, why does Donald Trump even claim he needs immunity if he's done nothing wrong at all? This is LegalAF. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Michael Popok, rocking the thick black glasses rims today. So you know Michael Popok's going to go hard.
It's the Tony Stark Iron Man look. That's what I've decided to go with today. Ben, I'm glad to be back. But I did watch you and Karen. I was traveling at that time. I watched you and Karen handle Wednesday so elegantly, which is our word of the day, so efficiently. And I'm really happy. You know, we were looking at our list today and we were thinking, it's amazing how things have developed and how in a very, very short amount of time in some of these major cases like the Dominion Fox thing we're going to be talking about, the weaponization of the federal government subcommittee thing, which we're going to talk about, headed by chief inmate in charge, Jim Jordan, and, rounding it out with where are we going and who's going to be first out of the box with prosecuting Donald Trump, and how close is the Manhattan DA now in bringing in Kellyanne Conway to confirm Michael Cohen's testimony about her role to who's going to prosecute first, who's coming out of the chute first. We're going to talk about it today.
You know, the wheels of justice aren't just turning in the right direction in our judicial system. The truth itself is surfacing in the political processes taking place. And when you watch these committee hearings, when you watch what's happening on the House floor, a lot of Democrats have legal backgrounds, legal degrees, and they are bringing that skill set to provide a very fact-based, evidence-based approach to debunking all of these MAGA right-wing conspiracies. And there really is a tie-in and a theme, if you will, in the episode from this first topic we're going to talk about to the third topic we're going to talk about, which the third topic is the unsealing of Fox deposition testimony and text messages and emails. Because, when you go on Fox and Fox platforms all of the lies and doesn't push back, the MAGA Republicans get away with it, right? But now that the MAGA Republicans are actually in charge of something in the House of Representatives, they don't know what to do when they are just being completely outflanked by facts and evidence and truth and naturally great orators and very skilled Democrats, a lot of skilled Democrats just pushing back. And it's kind of this rapid fire, right? And Democrats anticipating the moves as well that these MAGA Republicans are making. So one of the things that's been going on is Jim Jordan, the MAGA Republicans, they've been saying, we've got all of these FBI whistleblowers who are going to confirm that the FBI has been weaponized against conservatives. As you all know from watching, I don't call MAGA Republicans conservatives. There's nothing conservative about them. They don't even want to conserve our Constitution and our institutions. But the point they're making is that the FBI, led by somebody who Donald Trump appointed, Christopher Wray, is going after the MAGA Republicans. And so rather than have transparent hearings where the public can see what's going on, the MAGA Republicans are like, damn, we're just getting embarrassed on all fronts when we do it. So before we make these witnesses go public, if we do at all, let's just spread the rumor that there are these whistleblowers out there, and let's not actually tell the public what's really going on. Then we can go into our Fox bubble. Well, Democrats got their hands on these closed door interview sessions, and Democrats prepared a report. And they're like, look, normally we would respect the fact that these closed sessions are confidential. However, MAGA Republicans are out there talking to Fox and OAN and Newsmax and all their right-wing echo chambers about it. So we're not just going to sit back. We're going to let the public know what happened. So Democrats prepared this report. It's called GOP Witnesses, what their disclosures indicate about the state of the Republican investigations. It's a 315-page report. But when you go to the forward, it basically talks about what went down. And it says, look, the partisan investigation, such as it rests in large part on what Chairman Jim Jordan has described as dozens and dozens of whistleblowers coming to us, talking about what is going on, the political nature at the Justice Department. To date, the House Judiciary Committee has held transcribed interviews with 3 of these individuals. Chairman Jordan has, of course, refused to name any of the other dozens and dozens who may have spoken with him. He has also refused to share any of the documents which these individuals may have provided to the committee. And then this report goes on to say, first off, these people do not qualify for whistleblower protection. Second off, all of these people seem to be asking, they all buy into these right-wing conspiracy theories and they want to defund the FBI. A lot of these individuals were at the insurrection themselves or support insurrectionists themselves. And it seems that a lot of them are actually being funded by right-wing groups that are linked to Donald Trump as well. And what they cite as well is groups for a network of organizations led by former Trump administration officials like Kash Patel and Russell Vogt appear to have been identified as these witnesses, and these witnesses are being funded by them. And so, Popok, the importance of whistleblowers in our system seems to be another thing that MAGA Republicans want to attack, right? They want to attack the courts. They want to attack our Constitution. They want to attack the very political body. And whistleblowers, a group of people who we need to truly protect, it's another perversion of this, right, by MAGA Republicans. What do you think?
Well, there's 2 things that are totally wrong with Jim Jordan chairing the Judiciary Committee and the subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government committee. You've got literally the inmate running the asylum. Jim Jordan is an insurrectionist in his own right. He made the first phone call to Donald Trump at 7:30 in the morning on Jan 6th, urging him to have Mike Pence execute the plan to stop the peaceful transfer of power. That was his first phone call. So I don't want anybody to forget who Jim Jordan is and the reason that McCarthy put him in charge of these committees. It was to try to do maximum destruction. They are destroyers. And that's why they set up these committees under the guise of oversight. I can't tell you how many times Jim Jordan, in writing his letters to Christopher Wray, the FBI director, asking to speak to dozens of potential FBI current and former employees, he used the word oversight. I'm doing this for oversight. It's oversight. It's oversight. It's not. And the Democrats, the ranking Democrats that are on the committee, this again is the genius of Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries said, we're not going to do what the Republicans did on the Jan 6 committee, which was take the practice ball and go home while the real game went on without them. We're gonna put our people on there, and those people, where they can, are gonna do really great disclosures and counterpunching to the public. Like the Democrats, the two ranking Democrats, Gerald Nadler and a congresswoman from Rhode Island, or Vermont, they issued, as you said, a 316-page report. So while Jim Jordan was tying his shoes, the House Democrats were issuing a 316-page report, which of course they said, well, they were given license to do because Jordan's talking to the press about all of his things. I also like the fact that in the title of their report, maybe we can put it back up on the screen, they say it's the Republican investigation, not bipartisan. Because it is the Republican investigation. Democrats are just there holding up their end of the bargain and letting the American people know through transparency that this co-option of the vocabulary, as you referred to it, of whistleblower and oversight in this Orwellian way is insane. And, I mentioned it earlier in our pre-show that, Adam Kinzinger, former Jan 6 committee member, former representative, he sent in earlier this week a group of performance artists dressed as asylum inmates at a mental hospital in straitjackets to demonstrate to the world what we all know, which is the inmates are running the asylum and the chief inmate is Jordan. Now, let me talk about these three witnesses. Okay. That Jordan keeps talking about that are referenced in the report. You got George Hill, you got Stephen Friend, and you got Garrett O'Boyle. Two of them are already suspended by the FBI, and one of them is retired. They are deep QAnon conspiracy theorists because they've given testimony, and the Democrats have seen it and revealed it in their report. They believe that the Jan 6 was a Democratic-produced event, a false flag event. That's George Hill. They believe they're all anti-vaxxers. They all believe that Trump won the election, so they're election deniers. Yes, they exist in the FBI. I mean, let's be honest. And the thing that they were, quote unquote, whistleblowing allegedly about, for instance, was they're really upset that the Department of Justice and Biden administration is making the FBI go after domestic extreme terrorists. Domestic extreme terrorists. We shouldn't have to do that. Why is there so much emphasis on that? Or that they're going after people that attack abortion rights activists. Oh, we don't want to do that. That's not our policy. That's not what the FBI is doing. And for Jim Jordan, that is some sort of federal weaponization, to take the title from the subcommittee. But this is the point that's always missed. And this is why the counterpunching that you identified by the Democrats is so effective, because they lead with their chin, the Republicans. The FBI isn't a rogue agency that just gets up one morning and decides what to investigate. The policy is set by the Biden administration at the very top. It's then implemented by the Department of Justice, and the FBI, working in conjunction, along with other agencies such as Homeland Security, go after the priorities of the administration. How do I know the priority of the administration? Led by Joe Biden, led by Lisa Monaco, the Deputy Attorney General, and by Merrick Garland, that it is going after and rooting out domestic extremists, violent extremists, is because they've given policy statements to this effect that have gone back almost 2 years. On Merrick Garland gave a speech 2 years ago in which he cited as examples things that these FBI agents obviously want to ignore, like the 9 black churchgoers that were executed in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015, the 11 Jewish worshipers that were killed in Pittsburgh in 2018, the 23 Latinos and Latinas that were killed in a Walmart in 2020 and 2021. This is the violent extremism that yes, we saw them crawling all over the Capitol and trying to kill elected officials, but that's not the only example of these terrorist cells. In fact, history repeating itself and closing the loop, Merrick Garland, who made his bones as the prosecutor, one of the lead prosecutors for the Oklahoma City bombing under Janet Reno, then Attorney General, in 1995, Janet Reno set up a executive committee across all agencies to fight domestic extremism and terrorism. And now Merrick Garland has reactivated that executive committee and brought it all together. But this starts with the Biden administration. This isn't the FBI being rogue. This is the Biden administration issuing its national security for countering domestic terrorism policy back in 2021. It was one of the first things that Joe Biden said when he took office. He ran on this. Jan 6th has taken up so much of the oxygen of the discussion that we forget that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of domestic extremists that need to be rooted out, including some in the military. They're being addressed by Lloyd Austin. So you got 3 crackpot FBI agents or former FBI agents who are all QAnon and Trumpers and MAGA, who got identified originally by Kash Patel and Mr. Vaught that you talked about. And thank God for the Democrats who then sat through and sifted through all their interviews and said, first of all, there's no evidence. I'll give you one more example, Ben, that I thought was interesting. George Hill complained that there was some financial services bank that had some information about Jan 6th that wasn't pursued. They said, okay, what is it? He says, I don't know. Well, have you seen the document that you're referring to? I haven't seen it. Well, where have you heard it from? Around. This is the level of quote unquote credible evidence that Jim Jordan is using to try to, as just an excuse, to go after the Biden administration as a payback for what the Democrats did to their illustrious leader, Donald Trump, in impeaching him and going after him now criminally. And for them to try to cast doubt on Jan 6 investigations led by the FBI at a moment in time when they are all on trial or having been convicted, to me, is the ultimate in anti-patriot conduct once again by the Republican Party. It's the same as releasing the videos and 16,000 more, or whatever it is, more hours of footage to try to
to the insurrectionists
to try to upset the apple cart, to have insurrectionists now file motions for new trial and motions to overturn their sentencing and file in the Proud Boys case right now, motions to stay. Thank God judges are seeing through this. And I'll talk about it later on a hot take. Jeb Boasberg, who's about to take over from as the chief judge of all grand jury proceedings in the District of Columbia, he's handling a case right now where one of the insurrectionists said, "Oh, I want a timeout too. I want to take a look at all the video." And he said to her, "You got 34 hours of video showing exactly what you did on Jan 6th. That is a crime. I don't think sifting through more footage is going to help you." Denied. So, but this is what the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Jim Jordans and the Matt Gaetzes want. They want to help the Jan 6 patriots, look at the language, that are sitting rotting in jail because the mean Democrats have gone after them for attacking our Capitol and trying to burn it to the ground. And this is I'll leave it on this, Ben, for this point. This is the choice that has to be made in 2024. The Republicans are performing right now. You like to call it performative art. They are performing right now for the American people. This is what Republicans and MAGA in charge looks like. If you like what it looks like, vote red. If you don't, re-elect Joe Biden.
And I call it performative fascism or fascist signaling. They use the term virtue signaling. I use the term fascist signaling to other fascists. You mentioned the thousands and thousands of hours of footage, about 41,000 hours of footage. We talked about this on prior LegalAFs and Hot Takes, being turned over first to Tucker Carlson, then to the insurrectionists. To those listening on audio, you obviously made the quotes around patriots. They're not actually patriots at all. But the reason that the members of Congress, the MAGA Republicans, that has turned this over to the insurrectionists, is for the reason that you said. Basically, now the Department of Justice is going to get inundated with thousands of motions for new trials and to set aside their plea agreements and things like that, saying, oh, all this new evidence just came to us. So it's actually an effort to try to cripple the Department of Justice. That's why it's being done. As you were talking about domestic terrorism and MAGA Republicans giving aid and comfort to it, I want to read you this quote, and I want you to try to tell me, Popok, who you think said this quote. Ready? The government is afraid of the guns people have because they have to control the people at all times. Once you take away the guns, you can do anything to the people. You give them an inch and they take a mile. I believe we are slowly turning into a socialist government. The government is continually growing bigger and more powerful, and the people need to prepare to defend themselves against government control. Do you know who said that? I'll just get right to the point. But who
it's
do you
not
think said
Marjorie Taylor Greene, because the sentence structure is too complex, and I don't think Donald Trump could get the sentence out either. Who is it?
It's Timothy McVeigh.
Right on point.
And the Oklahoma City bomber said that. But that statement could be word for word, almost verbatim, any statement being made by a modern member of the MAGA Republican Party. And there was once a time in our country where objectively we would all look at that, whether you were a Democrat or whether you were a Republican, and you would say that type of statement right there is bad and scary, and we need to stop domestic terrorism.
Can I make a comment on that? Because I like that quote a lot. That is the subcommittee or committee that should exist under either Republican or Democratic houses. The committee to investigate and root out domestic violent extremist terrorism in America. Why every party and every color of party can't get behind that and instead politicize it in order to help a group of 900 anarchists and insurrectionists and the opposite of patriots. I have no idea. They think, because you can hear it in the campaign rhetoric of somebody like, any of the candidates that are running on the Republican side. I was trying to think exactly who it was, but they adopt all of this because they think this is going to be their ticket back to the White House and into control of Congress. And I have more faith in the American people that they don't want to hear about 3 crackpot FBI agents and their conspiracy theories. They want to hear about how do we get rid of terror cells that could blow up shopping malls and government buildings all across America. And now with this former president running around blowing the dog whistle, think they have permission to do that.
Oklahoma City bombing took place 27 years ago, April 19th, 1995. And when statements being made by Timothy McVeigh like that came out, people were asking, how come we didn't see the warning signs? Weren't those red flags? Well, now that's just day-to-day discourse. That's of the MAGA Republicans. That is how they talk. And look at the May 6, 2022 letter before the MAGA Republicans took power in the House of Representatives and before Jim Jordan took over as chair. I mean, this is the letter Jim Jordan wrote to the FBI director, Christopher Wray. He goes, "We have been alerted that the FBI appears to be attempting to terminate the employment of FBI employees who were engaged in protected First Amendment activity on January 6, 2021. The Department of Justice Office of Inspector General is now examining whether the FBI actions violate federal civil service law. While FBI employees may not participate in partisan political campaigns, FBI employees do not give up their rights to engage in political speech activity. We have serious concerns that the FBI appears to be retaliating against employees for engaging in political speech disfavored by FBI leadership. According to several whistleblowers, the FBI is suspending the security clearances of FBI employees for their participation in protected First Amendment activity on January 6th, 2021. Among the justifications for the suspensions of security clearances, the FBI cited Adjudicative Guideline A, allegiance to the United States, implying that the FBI believes the employees who attended protests on January 6th are no longer loyal to the United States. So just by the way, we're not even necessarily talking about terminations. What we're talking about is what they're claiming is retaliation, is that after certain former FBI officials or FBI officials who are suspended or still FBI, after they attended the January 6th insurrection as insurrectionists, they got their security clearance removed. And the MAGA Republicans want them to maintain their security clearance, and they view that as retaliation. I'll just say one final thing about whistleblowers. There are true courageous whistleblowers who came forward also in terms of why Jim Jordan should be disqualified from ever even talking about whistleblowers. He's someone who's directly retaliated against whistleblowers at the Ohio State University, where Jim Jordan used to work in the wrestling department, where Jim Jordan covered up multiple incidents of sexual assault against the players there and retaliated against the players and begged them and cried to them. And one of the wrestlers talked about how Jim Jordan called him up wheezing and crying, "Please don't tell anybody. Please, you can't. I need my job. I need my job." That is retaliation against the whistleblower, and the courageous whistleblowers who came forward at Ohio State are those deserving of the titles, not these traitors who Jim Jordan is masquerading and trying to claim as whistleblowers. Let's talk about Kellyanne Conway now. She visited the Manhattan District Attorney's office. I believe she had multiple meetings, and Manhattan District Attorney's Office investigation under Alvin Bragg is really starting to heat up here. You know, I co-host Political Beatdown with Michael Cohen. He talked about this past week that he was going to meet with the Manhattan District Attorney, he believed, for the final time for preparation, which we assume meant preparation for Cohen speaking before the criminal grand jury right there. We know about 5 other people have already testified before the criminal grand jury. It is possible for all of the criticism Alvin Bragg has taken, and by the way, a lot of it very rightfully so, he may actually be the first person to criminally indict Donald Trump directly. What do you make, though, of Kellyanne apparently voluntarily showing up? And just to remind people the context of what she was actually involved in as a lot. I mean, she was Trump's top campaign advisor and worked in the administration. Was there and observed multiple criminal acts on a daily basis involving Donald Trump. But she was also the person who called Michael Cohen to confirm. She was the person to call Michael Cohen to confirm that the hush money payments were actually made, or that they were received, and basically thanking Michael Cohen for making the payments to Stormy Daniels. So what do you think?
I think Michael Cohen, this is an attempt by the Manhattan DA's office to corroborate one significant piece of Michael Cohen's testimony to bolster his credibility when he ultimately testifies. She, from reporting and from what we know, while she had, as you said, a large role in the Trump administration and with Trump himself, and was one of his main handlers, her role in Stormy Daniels, according to Michael Cohen's public testimony, was relatively limited to what you mentioned, to kind of confirm that the Goldilocks to Papa Bear, the check has been delivered. That's about it. But why is that important? Because the more other people that are obviously not friendly witnesses to the Manhattan DA's office that can corroborate somebody like their lead witness, Michael Cohen, the better. Because we've talked about it. We won't belabor the point here. Michael comes in with his own sort of baggage in terms of credibility from his prior conduct. And so if you get somebody like Kellyanne Conway, that's really powerful in front of a grand jury. If she ultimately goes into the grand jury, this was sort of interviews to see how that would go. And as you said, voluntarily, same week she's apparently getting divorced from her her Democratic husband, George Conway, a marriage nobody understood how that lasted this long. That's what I think it's for. I think they're trying to find people other than Michael to corroborate elements of his story as links in the chain to put in front of the grand jury so they can walk out with the indictment. And just tying it back to the other wheels of justice that are simultaneously operating, federally led by Jack Smith, state-wise run by just two that we know of, Fani Willis, Fulton County, Georgia, and Manhattan DA prosecutors. We have Letitia James, but she's a New York Attorney General wearing her civil hat in the case against Trump. And as you said, we don't know. They're not timed out. They're not going to conclude exactly the same time. And they may not conclude ultimately to indict the people that we would like to see indicted, although I lean towards thinking that they will. But I think if we're up to the Michael Cohen going into the grand jury, followed by like Conway, I think they're almost done. And I don't think it's going to be much more, maybe end of spring, that if they're going to make that decision to indict or not. Alvin Bragg, who took, understandably so, a lot of heat, literally from day one of him taking over, having been elected the Manhattan DA, and all what happened last year with the noisily departure of people like Mark Pomerantz, who was assigned by his predecessor to go after Donald Trump, and was frustrated that they weren't doing it now under Alvin. Alvin has focused on one case, now bolstered by the fact that he got 17-count conviction against the Trump Organization, the only prosecutor in America to ever get a criminal conviction against a Trump entity and a main Trump entity. So he's bolstered by that. He's buoyed by that. Now he's got a very discrete case. It's $130,000 or whatever it is payment made by Trump, according to Michael Cohen, through Michael Cohen to the lawyers for Stormy Daniels, passing through hands like Alan Weisselberg, the CFO, and Kellyanne Conway, ultimately, along with the controller over at the Trump Organization. That's the case. That doesn't take long to put on. We assume Donald Trump is going to take the fifth and not testify at all. So this is a relatively short, discrete, easy case as far as criminal cases to put on, but he's got to get the indictment first, and that's all the work that Alvin's doing now. That's the role I think she plays. It's a corroborator for Michael Cohen's testimony.
I don't know if this is Alvin Bragg's strategy. If it was, I think it would be fairly brilliant, but I don't know. But here's something that it looks like. One of the things that I think he realizes and that Trump's good at doing is delay, right? So he's aware that the New York Attorney General's case, the civil fraud lawsuit that Letitia James brought, that's going to be heard. The trial is going to take place no matter what on October 3rd. That's like the death knell of Trump Organization, right? Like that lawsuit seeking at least $250 million, but likely in the billions, with the injunctive relief being requested that would basically shut down the Trump Organization from doing business, right? That puts the Trump org out of business. So perhaps Alvin Bragg,
the executives.
All of Donald Trump's adult children,
right.
Ivanka, Don Jr., Eric, all of them from doing business. Right. So that in many ways is almost worse to the greedy Trumps than criminal. But what if Alvin Bragg said this? All right, first go after the Trump Organization. Like, in the first round, let's just get our first win. It's not a knockout punch. The law doesn't allow massive penalties. We'll throw one of Trump's people in jail, put Weisselberg in Rikers for, 50 or 60 days or so. By the way, Rikers, even one day, is a pretty treacherous place to be in, internationally being viewed as a very tough place to be in from a human rights perspective, but then get that felony conviction, make the Trump Organization be deemed a felon. Okay, so what's the next criminal case if you're Alvin Bragg? Well, if you go after everything, the same thing that Tish James has been going after, that criminal case could take years and years and years. And Donald Trump is older, and we want to get Donald Trump in jail right now, right? We want to throw the guy in jail. So if you do the broader business case, could that lead to kind of many, many, many years of discovery, and that drags out? But what if Alvin Bragg goes, I'm not saying I'm not even going to go there, but let's just chip away at it. And for the next one, let's focus on just a home run, easy case that I think we could definitely win and win it quickly and get Donald Trump's ass behind bars relatively quickly. All right. So which one do? You put in front of a New York jury, Donald Trump having sex, if that's even what you would call it, with a porn star for 3 seconds that he tries to cover up because he's married at the time and his wife is pregnant at the time. You're going to put that before a jury. You got the witnesses talking about the hush money. It's all laid out right there. It's very easy to prove. The jury's going to absolutely be repulsed. It's a 4-year prison sentence. Even if, you factor in different sentencing guidelines, you get the guy in jail for a year, or even if you get him in jail for slightly more than a year, you put his ass behind jail. You don't give up the other cases. You still have the ability to pursue him, but Tish James is going after him there. Fani Willis is going there. Jack Smith, let's get his ass behind bars. I'm not saying that that's absolutely what the strategy is.
Let me comment on that. I think you're onto something. There's an old country phrase. When you're walking down a country road and you see a turtle up on a fence post, somebody put it there. Alvin Bragg, who I can't even, the vitriol against Alvin Bragg, including when we had him on this show, is the magnitude of it is mind-boggling. But he's been a career prosecutor for 30 years, federal and state. He's not only just getting regular updates from Letitia James and the New York Attorney General. They work hand in glove on all of these cases with people in each other's offices, cross-deputized to work in their offices. He knows what Letitia James's approach has been. The most powerful attorney general in the country is likely the New York Attorney General because of the powers that she's given under a body of executive law that we've talked about before, to, as you said, to blow up the world, death penalty to a company, death penalty to the executives from ever serving in any position in the state of New York again. Basically, they're done. The grift is over. He cannot do that at the criminal side. We had all the people crying in their coffee about, the Trump organization only got fined $1.7 million or whatever it was, and nobody went to jail, right? Because it's a corporation. Nobody goes to jail on corporations if that is the entity, and the fine is limited under the state of New York by a very antiquated set of statutes. So the powers of the attorney general so much broader, so much greater, and Alvin Bragg knows that. And so you're right. His complicated case under Mark Pomerantz would have taken years to develop and put on, and it would have resulted in, yes, jail sentence. Nobody wants the perp walk of Donald Trump more than you and me. But that is not what we want to hit him where he lives. We want to end the grift machine. We want to end the company and have that all happen before he runs for office or before the election. That's happening right now. And you're so right then. He gets the 17-count conviction. He defers on purpose, not by accident, to the New York Attorney General to let her cripple financially the company and all of its people. And then he gets the layup of the conviction on Stormy Daniels. I mean, for us not to give him credit for perhaps that being his strategy is really doing the man a disservice. He's not the village idiot. I know people that know him. Okay, he may not have been exactly what we wanted at that moment, and everybody wants his head on a pike, but he knows how to be a prosecutor, and he's learning how to go after strategically people. So we're going to see at the end. He'll write a memoir one day. We'll really get to the bottom of it. But I like the way you've laid it out. And I think now looking at it, it is for me a little bit of the tortoise up on the fence post.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. We got to talk about the Fox filing. The Fox files, the new Dominion opposition document that has these devastating text messages and under oath deposition testimony about Trump. I've never seen something just so laid out like this, because normally a case like this would settle from the outset, but just given the dynamic here, it has not. And I don't think it is. I want to know, though, if you think Fox is going to write $1 billion check, because I don't know what other move they potentially have other than writing a billion dollar check. But remember, they only have $5 billion in reserves, so they may have to sell some stock. We'll talk more about that. And let's also talk about the Department of Justice filing, I think, a pretty bombshell legal brief with the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals saying that Donald Trump should not have absolute immunity, that even though presidential powers are broad and the outer limits of immunity as defined by the Supreme Court extend very, very, very far, Donald Trump's conduct on January 6th extends beyond those outer limits. But first, let's take a very quick break.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Look, everyone knows how annoying cheap razors are. The cuts, the irritation, the frustration. And don't get me started with subscription razor services, the headaches that those can cause. That's why you gotta meet Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the ISS. That's the International Space Station and Mars rover. And now they're bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. Razor blades, they're like diving boards. The longer the board, the more wobble. The more wobble, the more nicks, cuts, and scrapes. A bad shave, it isn't a blade problem. It's an extension problem. By using aerospace-grade CNC machines, Henson makes metal razors that extend just 0.0013 inches, which is less than the thickness of human hair. That means a secure and stable blade with a vibration-free shave. It gets better. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream, which makes clogging virtually impossible. Seriously, Henson Shaving wants the best razor, not the best razor business. That means no plastic, no subscriptions, no proprietary blades, and no planned obsolescence. The Henson razor works with standard dual-edge blades to give you that old-school shave with the benefits of new-school tech. Once you own a Henson razor, it's only about $3 to $5 per year to replace the blades. My first shave with the Henson razor was incredibly refreshing. The design is sleek and the durability is top-notch. The Henson razor is truly so much better than your run-of-the-mill quote-unquote traditional razor brand. And the affordability factor is absolutely game-changing. No more wasting your money on expensive blades. With Henson Shaving, you can get a year of blades for just $5. Okay, so this is what you have to do. It's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that'll last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/LegalAF to pick up the razor for you and use our code LegalAF and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/LegalAF and use code LegalAF. And now back to the video.
And we are back to Legal AF. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Popok. What we still got to talk about in this episode for those just joining right now is first, we are going to talk about the new filing in the Dominion defamation lawsuit against Fox. Some smoking gun after smoking gun after smoking gun. I don't even know. What do you call it when there's hundreds of smoking guns?
I got it.
Dominion.
I know. It's called a circular firing squad.
Okay, I love it. And the Dominion lawyers, after this is all done, we got to get them on the show because they have done an A+ job. And then we got to talk about the Department of Justice, because I thought their legal brief that they filed in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals saying that Donald Trump should not have absolute immunity at all, and having this very nuanced argument to protect presidential powers while also recognizing a very narrow exception right here in the unprecedented nature of a former president, and it pains me to say that and use that name with Donald Trump, but who actually engages in violent political insurrection and what that means. So we will talk about that, but let's jump into these Fox filings just to give everybody the context here. When we talked about the Fox filing last time, it was Dominion's summary judgment motion that they filed against Fox, where they were saying, Judge, based on all of the evidence that we've developed, find liability right away. No jury could ever disagree with us essentially that Fox defamed us even under the heightened pleading standard that we're talking about when it comes to defamation cases. We've actually proved actual malice and recklessness here. Look at right here in the Times v. Sullivan line of cases. This specific filing is an opposition that Dominion filed to Fox's summary judgment. So Fox is saying we are just neutral reporters of the news and we deserve immunity. Look, there are these, this is Fox's argument. There's all these wacky conspiracy theories out there. However, all we did is just let them speak and share their story, basically. We just gave the guests a platform. We didn't do more than that. Okay, so what does Dominion say in its filing? Let's pull up the deposition of Rupert Murdoch. Question: you are aware now that Fox did more than simply host the guests and give them a platform, correct? Answer: by Rupert Murdoch. I think you've shown me some material in support of that. So right there, I think the summary judgment is over when Rupert Murdoch admits, and he goes on to talk about all of the various hosts, some of the disgusting things that come up in this filing as well. Rupert Murdoch basically says, well, all I care about is the green, whether you're red or blue, all I care about is green, talking about it's all about the money. We see that during Trump's campaign, Rupert Murdoch provided Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, with confidential information that Fox received about Biden's ads, along with debate strategy, and specific sections of Rupert Murdoch's deposition was quoted where he admits to it, as well as communications are attached where you see that Rupert Murdoch was providing confidential documents that the Biden campaign gave it because Fox pretends to be a news network. And when Fox is hosting a debate, they have to get some of the assets. Fox would then they just hand over the assets to Jared Kushner. And then there was this one moment from the filings that, one thing they basically said is Rupert confirmed that he could have told anybody basically stop this and they would have listened. So the question was, and you could have said to the CEO of Fox, Suzanne Scott, or to the host, stop putting this person or that person or Rudy Giuliani on the air. You could have done that. And then Rupert Murdoch says, I could have, but I didn't. And then this one moment that I thought was so powerful, the day before the insurrection, this is what the filing says. Rupert Murdoch understood that Fox could do something about the false claims. Indeed, he believed Fox was uniquely positioned to state the message that the election was not stolen. On January 5th, Rupert Murdoch and Suzanne Scott discussed whether Hannity, Carlson, and Ingraham should say some version of, quote, the election is over and Joe Biden won. He hoped those words, quote, would go a long way to stop the Trump myth that the election was stolen. These are all deposition citations. Suzanne Scott told Rupert Murdoch that, quote, privately, they are all there. But, quote, we need to be careful about using the shows and pissing off the viewers. So nobody made a statement. The next day was January 6th, the date of the insurrection. So just showing that privately, all of their hosts, Ingraham, Hannity, Carlson, all knew that Joe Biden had won. They were uniquely positioned to get it out, but they were afraid of pissing off the viewers and the cult that they helped create. Your reaction, Michael Popok?
Well, this is a Murdoch week, although slightly spelled differently. The reason Alex Murdoch lost his murder trial is for two-word reason, Alex Murdoch. And the reason I believe ultimately if they don't settle, Fox is going to lose their case on defamation and Dominion's going to be able to prove actual malice is because of 91-year-old Rupert Murdoch and his testimony. If anybody's testimony will be a powerful moment in the courtroom that will swing the fortunes directly over to Dominion. If it goes as far as a trial, it's going to be the video testimony, ultimately live testimony of, I don't know how to put this nicely, somebody that looks like he's lost his fastball in testifying about the case. He got confused about their strategy, their defense strategy, which appears to be that they're able to thread the needle or to push an elephant through the eye of a needle and prove to a jury that the Fox Corporation and Fox News is not what the anchors do on the air, and that he has or has exercised no editorial control over, admittedly, over what the Hannitys, Carlsons, and Ingrahams do on the air, and therefore Fox Corp, at least, shouldn't be liable for the craziness over at Fox News. It is not going to work if that is their theory of defense, and it appears to be, because they made a big deal in their summary judgment papers, Fox, as saying, see, as you said earlier, Ben, he didn't exercise any editorial discretion. He didn't give them instructions not to say those things and to announce to the world, as every other person knew, that Joe Biden had won. If he had done that, of course, we may not be here. But some of the other comments were just eye-poppingly evidence in favor of Dominion, and I think lose the case, and it'll be because of Rupert Murdoch, when he says, in interrupting the person asking him the questions under oath in deposition. And he said, yeah, the anchors did that, but not Fox. It wasn't Fox. It was the Fox anchors. Good luck with that distinction without a difference in front of a jury. And saying that, because that only for me proves actual malice, which is the standard that has to be proved. Again, that the on-air personalities in bringing on its guests, and not just bringing on its guests like Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, and other people to spew and spout these unhinged theories of QAnon, the fevered dreams of QAnon and conspiracy theories about Joe Biden and Arizona and all this other BS that led to the election of Joe Biden and not the election of Donald Trump. It's not just those people. It's the commentary in and around it by people like Tucker Carlson, who goes on the air and says things out loud that are defamatory about Joe Biden, the Democrats, and other people in power. That goes beyond First Amendment. Well, we're going to talk about First Amendment when we get to the last segment today, about the inciting insurrectionist speech by Donald Trump and why that doesn't enjoy absolute immunity. But here, the First Amendment that is given to a legitimate media organization who only reports on the news but doesn't say things out loud or let its guests says things out loud unchallenged, that where they recklessly disregard the truth or know that it's false, which is the standard that has to be proved. Rupert Murdoch proved that standard. They asked him in his deposition, why in heaven? This is my paraphrase of the question from the deposition. Why would you allow, or would the organization allow Mike Lindell to come on and promote all of his conspiracy, crazy crackpot theories? Why would you platform him, to use a term, Ben, that you like to use? And Rupert Murdoch, in a moment of Freudian slip where he accidentally told the truth, which is the definition of it in Washington, said he pays us money. He pays us a lot of money. I don't do Australian accents, so I'm not going to do it here. He said, and this is my favorite quote, "It's not red or blue, it's green. That's the reason." Exactly. That's going to be my lead in the opening if I'm the lawyers for Dominion, who we hope to have on one day. Right. It's not about politics. You never believe this stuff. This was just to make money because you were afraid of losing audience and viewership to right-wing, even more right-wing extremist platforms like OAN and Newsmax and all that. So you needed to keep putting the red meat front and center for your audience. The truth be damned. And that is what comes out of Rupert Murdoch. Joe Biden gets a lot of unfair criticism and ageism because he's 80. Rupert Murdoch is 91, okay? And so I'm not saying that that's the problem here, but he did not seem to really help his cause at all and seemed to have lost his way in the deposition about what their theory of defense was, whether the jury was going to buy. This is all about the brand protection. I'm not responsible for what Tucker Carlson says on the air. If you're not responsible for it, who is? He's not on the Tucker Carlson network. I mean, some of these guys that had to leave mainstream or right-wing media had to go off into the hinterlands and go do, cable or satellite. But that's not these guys. These guys and women are on the air and they're making billions and billions of dollars as a result. So there's absolutely no incentive for them to ferret out the truth. They bury their head in the sand. And we know from the emails disclosed by the people on air that they didn't even believe any of this stuff either. I'm going to say this once and for all, because I read recently what Tucker Carlson's been saying on his show. And again, it's defamatory. Mostly his show is defamatory and not protected by the First Amendment. Nothing that is controversial that comes out of Tucker Carlson's mouth does he actually believe. And they should have an FDA warning label at the bottom of whatever he says, because he does not believe this. And now they have finally met their match by going after Dominion, and who had their business destroyed, who's not going to take it, who's lifted up the window, put their head out of it and yelled, "We're not going to take it anymore." And they're now going to bring Fox News to its knees. Although I have not, Ben, I want to hear your comment. I have not seen a change in their editorial approach since all of these emails have come out at all, not one. So, a lot of times, and I'm sure the Dominion lawyers are watching it too, because they can point that out to the jury. That look, even after all of this came out, here's a clip from 2 days ago and Tucker Carlson going after somebody else. This is a unhinged organization. And there's one other comment I'll make. I have a lot of negative things in general to say about Roger Ailes, who had to leave the network in disgrace because of sex attacks, sex crimes, and the Me Too movement. But one thing he was very good at was keeping control over the anchors, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and the like, and threading that needle, walking that fine line to make sure they didn't go and drink all the Kool-Aid and go completely over to the other side. Roger Ailes has been gone for a long time. Rupert Murdoch can't serve that role. Lachlan Murdoch can't serve that role. And the president of television over there is obviously no Roger Ailes. This is all because Roger Ailes has been gone and the inmates are running the asylum again.
The one editorial change that I've seen is they've kind of done a light shadow ban, if you will, of Donald Trump. They don't have Donald Trump directly on the program. They're promoting DeSantis over Donald Trump, which is infuriating Donald Trump. They did not cover Donald Trump going to East Palestine. They're not covering CPAC. They are still spreading lies and disinformation regarding lots of other topics with equally disastrous consequences, attacking the fibers of our democracy every day. I do think the one editorial change that they've made, however, is specifically as it's related to Donald Trump. Now,
before you move on, Tucker Carlson just 3 days ago said that one of the reasons we have a transgender problem in America is because Joe Biden is too old to be president, and it reflects a decaying society that allows for the issues that we have. I mean, this is on, and what, 10 years from now or whatever, the replacement for Rupert Murdoch is going to say, but that's those guys. That's not Fox. Come on.
Well, to my point, they are still saying hateful, discriminatory, spreading conspiracy theories about Biden relentlessly every single day in service of DeSantis. That's the one that they want to anoint to try to help their oligarchical ambitions of being state-run media in a non-democracy country. That's ultimately their final aim. But, you even see Donald Trump basically going after Rupert Murdoch. And I don't want to read the full post, but you've got Donald Trump saying, "Why is Rupert Murdoch throwing his anchors under the table, which also happens to be killing his case and infuriating his viewers who will again be leaving in droves? They already are." And I think what Trump meant here, because he said, put some other posts, is throwing his anchors under the bus, like his news anchors under the bus. But it's also a Freudian slip because he engages in so much under the table transactions.
Right. That's not the phrase. That's right.
So it's a complete fusion of all of the deranged things that are in his mind. And one final point I'll make, though, to the point that you made, though, about Murdoch. When I read a lot of the filing, Murdoch does try to wiggle out of the questions. The problem that he confronted, all of this is in text messages and emails. And so what the Dominion lawyer brilliantly does at the outset of these depositions is basically train the witness. Do not lie. Do not lie. Why not? Because I'm just going to show you a document that's going to show that you just lied. So your first lie, okay, the Dominion lawyers probably have 50 binders, and the deposition can be an easy one where they don't even need to use the binders because the answers are going to be truthful. Or, okay, you want to play it that way, and this is what I've done in my depositions. Okay, let's pull out the binders. Let's go through your messages. Let's go through your emails, and we go one by one. And inevitably what happens once the witness learns that, oh crap, you've done your homework, you've read all of my text messages, the witness then goes, all right, yeah, I did it. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. We still have a lot to discuss on this episode of Legal AF, including the Department of Justice's brief that they just filed in the DC Circuit Court of Appeals describing absolute immunity, the contours of it, and most importantly, Donald Trump, you ain't getting it. The Court of Appeals still has to rule, but a powerful filing indeed by the Department of Justice. We just have one quick commercial break. Let's throw to it right now.
And now let's take a quick break to talk about our next partner, Green Chef. Green Chef has expanded their menu. Now choose from 30 recipes weekly with the option to mix and match meals from different dietary preferences in the same box without changing your plan. This means you can order vegan one day and then keto the next. Green Chef is the #1 meal kit for eating well with dinners that work for you, not the other way around. Bring more flavor to your table this spring with Green Chef's wholesome, elevated recipes featuring seasonal, organic produce and unique farm fresh ingredients. Eat well without having to sacrifice taste. Also, Green Chef is the only meal kit that is both carbon and plastic offset. Green Chef offsets 100% of their carbon footprint as well as 100% of the plastic in every box. My wife and I absolutely love Green Chef because of how easy it is to cook the meals and how delicious each meal is. Our favorite recipe is the Parmesan crusted chicken. It is incredible. Go to greenchef.com/legalaf60 and use code legalaf60 to get 60% off plus free shipping. That's greenchef.com/legalaf60 and use code legalaf60 to get 60% off plus free shipping. And now back to the video.
And welcome back to Legal AF. So want to talk about this filing by the Department of Justice because of the unprecedented nature of having somebody like Donald Trump incite a violent insurrection. Our Constitution is being tested for centuries, decades recently, where the powers have been even more expanded. But Article 2, which sets forth the powers of the president, have been expanded, and they've been viewed by Supreme Courts over time to have expanded immunities from civil lawsuits. And so in 1982, for example, there was a case called Nixon versus Fitzgerald, where the allegations being made by a government employee against Nixon when Nixon was president, you unlawfully terminated me because I was a whistleblower and was speaking out against your criminal conduct. And there, the Supreme Court said, sorry, sitting presidents can't be sued. They get absolute immunity so long as their conduct is within the kind of orbit and prerogatives of a president's constitutional powers. And so even if the conduct being alleged by the government employee, in this case Fitzgerald, falls within the outer contours of the presidential powers, right, wrongfully terminating somebody, the Supreme Court still said that's still a function of what executives do, what the president does, hiring and firing employees within the executive branch. Then came along a case in 96 or 97, the Clinton versus Jones case. And in that case, the allegations against Bill Clinton preceded the time that he was in office. And there the Supreme Court said, no, what Nixon versus Fitzgerald said is this absolute immunity we're giving from civil lawsuits to presidents. You have to be in office, Bill Clinton. So your conduct before or your conduct after you should not be subject. You don't get absolute immunity. And this conduct predates the time that you were in office as the United States president. So in this case that was brought, the current case, fast forward after the January 6th insurrection, members of Congress and Capitol Police officers file a lawsuit directly against Donald Trump and other people for the injuries they suffered during the January 6th insurrection, when the insurrectionists came and threatened their lives. And one of the accusations is emotional distress and other harm that they experienced from this incitement of violence to stop a lawful processes that was taking place. Donald Trump argues in front of the district court judge, federal judge in D.C., Amit Mehta, I should get absolute immunity, citing Nixon versus Fitzgerald. In a very well-reasoned opinion, Judge Mehta, the federal judge, says, look, I absolutely respect Nixon versus Fitzgerald case law, and I understand the outer limits of presidential power, but your conduct on that day of inciting political violence is not within even the outer limits of what a president's supposed to do. So only in this narrow circumstance is there an exception. Donald Trump then appealed because he lost the motion to dismiss. He appealed before the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. They held oral arguments in the past few months, but then they asked for a legal brief to be filed by the Department of Justice. Hey, Department of Justice, what is your opinion here? What the Department of Justice opinion in is not dispositive. So this legal brief that was filed is not the final word. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals has to ultimately make a ruling. It will undoubtedly go to the Supreme Court. And it was an interesting position for the Department of Justice to be in because they represent the executive branch. So their normal briefing is, let's protect presidential powers. How do we expand the powers or protect the expanded powers? So they had to have a very nuanced argument here. And Popok, maybe break down the nuances here, though, when they said, in this specific circumstance only, and that's all we're talking about. These specific facts, Trump's conduct on January 6th does not even fall within the outer perimeters of what presidential power is. So no absolute immunity. We are not having a broader discussion here on the breadth of presidential executive powers, though. They wanted to make that point very clear. Popok.
Yeah. It was actually even more nuanced than that, because they made it clear in... Well, let me start procedurally. Judge Mehta makes a ruling last February in Thompson versus Trump, which is the case that we've talked about with 11 House members, including Eric Swalwell and Maxine Waters. Used to be Benny Thompson, but when he became the chair of the Jan 6 committee, dropped out. A couple of Capitol Police are suing under the KKK Act for civil rights violations and other civil claims against Donald Trump as president, when he was president, for inciting the riot, the anarchy, the insurrection that attacked the Capitol, and all of the injury, personal, physical, emotional, that occurred as a result. That's the case. Judge Mehta, who we've talked about before, who's presiding over cases that, including the Oath Keepers cases, we've talked about it before, very smart, very sober, very Solomonic in his decision-making. He looked at all the pleadings and said, he made a determination that the language that Donald Trump used was outside the outer boundaries of absolute immunity that's given to a president, generally when he exercises his Article 2 powers, his official duties, and even things, because the U.S. Supreme Court has expanded that, as you said, pushing it out to some envelope or box that even the courts don't know what it is. They just call it the outer boundaries. When I was a kid, there was a science fiction show called The Outer Limits. You didn't know what that was, but it was somewhere out there. And it's somewhere out there, this nebulous concept that the Supreme Court has developed. One comment on that about wheels of justice and how fast they move or don't move. The case that you cited, and rightly cited as the Nixon case, that was decided, Nixon v. Fitzgerald, in 1982. Nixon was president and resigned in 1974. This is 8 years. And people are like, in 2 years, we haven't completed everything. This is the worst episode of Law and Order yet. Things take...
Such a good point, actually.
This 8-year-old case, the president, he was almost dead by the time. Nixon was almost died. I have to find the year he died. Anyway, So we have the interesting setup here is the DC Circuit Court has actually asked the Department of Justice to file their amicus brief. So it's a friendly brief.
1994.
He died in 1994. Okay. He was almost dead. And so this amicus brief comes in, sort of on a greased set of skids because the court wants to see the Department of Justice's position. And this happens all the time. We just saw it, just as an example, as we're doing our LegalAF homework here, coursework here. There's a case that just got heard on oral argument. And I love this. This is so foundational for the United States. New York versus New Jersey. That's the case over whether the Waterfront Commission, which has been around since the 1950s or 1960s, whether New York can force New Jersey to stay in the Waterfront Commission, or if New Jersey exercising sovereignty can say, we're out, we're kind of tired of being forced to be in this commission. And there was an oral argument at the Supreme Court, and the Department of Justice took a position and filed a brief, even though they're not part of the parties, they're not New York or New Jersey, and they actually sided with New Jersey that they could exit. Here, they're not taking a position. They were very careful in the briefing, and we'll put part of it up on the screen. They're very careful to say, we're not here to comment about whether Judge Maida was right or wrong about that the language incited the riot. But if it did, there is no absolute immunity. And the most interesting thing, Ben, and this is another, I believe, tactical error by the lawyers working for Donald Trump. No shock here. They did not claim that the language did not incite. I want to read the quote. Let me see if I can grab it quick. They did not claim that. This is what the Department of Justice, and maybe our producer Salty can find this. This is what the Department of Justice said in its brief. In this court, President Trump has not challenged the district court's conclusion, reiterated by plaintiffs on appeal, that the complaints plausibly allege that his speech instigated the attack on the Capitol. Stop right there. The most fundamental thing, that his speech instigated the private violence on the Capitol, he did not oppose that in his briefing. Instead, the Department of Justice goes on. Donald Trump's briefs advance only a single categorical argument. A president is always immune from any civil suits based on his, quote, speech on matters of public concern, and they cite to the brief for Donald Trump, even if that speech also constitutes incitement to imminent private violence. The U.S. respectfully submits to the court that is categorically wrong. That argument is wrong. That is how they've set it up so beautifully, so eloquently, so perfectly. And it's because Donald Trump walked into the trap. What he should have said is, my language did not incite private violence. That's the exception to both the First Amendment protections and equally concomitantly the presidential absolute immunity privileges. If neither the First Amendment nor presidential immunity covers language that incites private violence or leads us there. His argument is, even if it did, I'm the president, Article 2 powers, official duties, commenting on public things. I get absolute immunity, which is, if it's that narrow of an issue as briefed, and I got to believe the Department of Justice is properly reciting from Donald Trump's own brief, he's going to lose at the DC Circuit Court level, and I believe he's going to lose at the U.S. Supreme Court level, even one led by the complete right wing. What I would have argued on appeal is that I was commenting about an election. I'm an Article 2 president at that time, wearing that hat, even given the outer boundaries, and we never get to whether that is within the heartland of absolute immunity. I'm within that. They want to take it further and make new law that even if I incite violence, I'm covered by absolute immunity. He is going to lose on that argument. And the Department of Justice very deftly said, we're not going to comment on Judge Maida's decision that the language did do it. We're just going to use Donald Trump's own words as a cudgel to bash him and say, if that is the way you have set up the argument, we're going to pull the leg out from under it and everything falls. This house of cards is all going to fall. So I like that a lot. I think that's another example of just the pure brilliance and talent of people that work, in this case, in the appellate group, in the appellate department of the civil division of the Department of Justice, in taking on Donald Trump just the right way. We'll see who the panel is. They'll have oral argument. We'll report on it. I'm sure Donald Trump will take some sort of attempted fast track. This will be covered by Chief Justice Roberts, because we're talking about DC stuff. He's going to have to decide whether it goes to the full Supreme Court, which I'm sure he will, and whether they're going to make new law about what are these outer boundaries of Article 2 presidential official conduct for absolute immunity, and make, again, new law. We've talked about this before. Let me end my piece here. The reason why you and I cite so many times some case involving Richard Nixon, is because that was the last time we had a traitorous president in office for which Congress and the American people had to regroup to reestablish the guardrails of democracy and through the court system to make sure this never happened again. That's why there's a whole body of law from the 70s, and as we just said, all the way up to 1982, involving Richard Nixon. We, the next generation of LegalAF hosts, when our children, grandchildren, take over as hosts and talk about what dads did back then, they're going to be talking about a whole body of law that starts or ends with the word Trump, because that's what happened. That's what a healthy democracy with a properly functioning co-equal branches of government, including a judiciary, that's what happens. Now, I'm just not sure how that body of case law is going to come out, pardon me, being filtered through a right-wing, we didn't have that. We had a Warren court. We had a Rehnquist court during the Supreme Court that was handling those other cases. And while they were Republicans, they were more statespeople. They were the classic Goldwater, Reagan type Republicans, not what we're seeing here. Not this right-wing federalist, nationalist, religious.
Just call them fascist. Let's call them what they are. Fascist,
I'll let you do that.
Fascist traitors, Popok.
But that's our problem. That's the filter, the prism that this body of law off of this traitorous, corrupt president is going to be developed. And I'm not sure exactly how it's going to come out. Nixon, they were like, everybody, red, blue, purple, green, thought Richard Nixon was corrupt, and what he did was an affront to democracy and needed to be punished. And all the cases went in that direction. You and I are going to have a lot to report on as these Trump cases wend their way through this U.S. Supreme Court.
If you look at the history of Fox, it was actually created by right-wing fascist-leaning people evaluating the experience with Nixon and wanting to come up with a propaganda machine to try to avoid that situation where objective truths can lead to actual accountability. To your point also, Popok, not a lot of universities, high schools, hospitals, highways named after Richard Nixon, and the same fate will ultimately befall Donald Trump, but certainly a lot of court cases, and we certainly hope that those court cases are court cases that strengthen our democracy and strengthen the rule of law, not in the performative sense that is used by MAGA Republicans, but in the real sense of what the law is supposed to do and its equal treatment, and that no one should be above the law. But we do know, and I will leave at this point, because I think it is a bit of a nice way to put a bow on the episode to see how Donald Trump is handling all of these developments, how terrified he is right now. And earlier in the day, Donald Trump kept on posting on his social media platform as he gets weaker and weaker and weaker and more scared. This is what he referred to Jack Smith as today. He goes, "This animal prosecutor they stuck on me over the box hoax is trying to torture and he puts torture in capitals, my people into telling lies. It's all for political reasons, and the fact that I'm leading big in all of the polls, he's flying people from all over and throwing them in front of a DC grand jury. They are confused and scared. They've never done this before. These Democrat Marxist pigs should be the ones that are investigated. The nice guy prosecutor in the Biden documents case hasn't even started yet. And then there's another one that he posts like right around that time. But the radical left Democrat prosecutors go after Trump over the box hoax, horseface, and all other trivia. They've stolen millions of dollars. I'm not even going to read the rest of it because it is just so despicable and disgusting. And he uses that term also to refer to the woman, Stormy Daniels, that he had sex with. That's what he calls her. He calls her horseface, and he repeats that over and over again. So we're really dealing with a degenerating, disgusting, deranged individual. And the fact that, and this is what we were just talking about, where are we in 2023, right? There is this exhausted majority, and what we know historically is that there are susceptibilities for exhausted majorities to succumb to really motivated, relentless fascist minorities in historical precedent, right? And one of the reasons we do Legal AF and why we talk about the importance of law and order in its truest sense, and why it's vital that we have this community education, and why this is all about the community at Midas Touch, the Midas Mighty, all of you watching, all of you listening to this, is that the exhausted majority can be exhausted no longer. And we're not exhausted any longer. The threat is existential, and the remedy, the antidote, actually is the true rule of law. And it is vital that that be upheld. And part of upholding it is educating and understanding what it is in its truest sense. Popok, I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, every time I look at these texts, truth, whatever they are, it's always the same dog whistles. It's always racist. Anybody that goes after him, black, white, Asian, or otherwise, is racist. So he likes that in there. It's always Marxist or socialists, because that's the way they've successfully, unfortunately, tagged Democrats, regardless of which end of the spectrum the Democrat is on, as a socialist and Marxist, which really plays to them trying to get the Latin community to vote for them. Because anytime you say somebody's socialist, and they convince that person, that voter, they vote the other way. And then it's just this constant haranguing, which he thinks is winning in the world of public opinion, but I assure you is likely losing where it matters, which is it is just pissing off the prosecutors who are trying to find ways 24/7 to bring him to justice, and allowing him to continue to poke the bear like this is only at the end going to, when he's sitting as a witness or not, or the grand jury, they're going to use comments like this to show state of mind, or what you think and I think, which is a state of a mind going out of his mind, but criminal intent at the most important moments when they're seeking the indictment. So what I would like to say to Donald Trump is keep tweeting, keep social truthing, keep whatever you're doing, because you're sloppy. You don't have any handler around you that you trust. There's no good lawyer around you that vets these things. You have screwed up, and you will screw up in the things that you're writing. And a prosecutor who knows what they're doing, like Jack Smith and his team and Merrick Garland, are going to put these and shove these up your backside at the appropriate time when they're seeking their indictments.
Michael Popok, well said. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in this episode of Legal AF. Special thanks as well to our sponsors. Support our sponsors because they support our show, and by supporting our show, they support our democracy. Also, check us out wherever you download your audio. It's a way that you can help us as well. So for all the audio podcast listeners, subscribe to YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, we're marching to 1 million subscribers in in the month of March.
free.
All you got to do is subscribe. It's free to subscribe. And then for all of our YouTube listeners, here is an important way you help the show. Please subscribe to Legal AF on audio podcasts. Wherever you get your audio podcasts, subscribe to Legal AF. Because here's the thing. We also drop special weekly other episodes of Legal AF, some of the hot takes that Michael Popok and I do there as well. So make sure you subscribe to the Legal AF audio podcast there as well. Check out patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. We are doing we did earlier in the day rather a live Zoom call with all of our patrons, but we're going to be doing another one next month. So subscribe to that. You get to meet us. We can ask questions. You'll meet me and my brothers. Maybe Popok will show up, one of them, and just say what's up. And also check out all of Popok's hot takes. He makes them hot right out of the oven for you. He cooks them. He serves them to you. They're delicious. Check out Michael Popok's hot takes. Michael Popok, as always, I love doing the show with you. I have so much fun. I love your glasses, and I love the Meidas Mighty out there. Thank you to all the Meidas Mighty. None of this is possible without you. Special shout out to the Meidas Mighty.